the first time I was ever followed home. I was either in 7th or 8th grade when the story took place. It was a hot, humid summer in the Midwest, and I lived in one of those true crime story towns. You know the type, nothing bad happens here. Everyone knows everyone. The sun had just started to set when my softball game ended. Everyone was packing up to head home, and my little sister had already been driven home by her father. My coach had offered me a ride, but being an idiot and embarrassed to accept help, I turned him down. Again, the stupidest decision I could have made. In my head, my home was only across town, which wasn't that far. Besides, I had my bike and I was already on thin ice when it came to leaving it at other people's houses. So once most people had left, I packed up my gear and began riding home. About 2 blocks in, as I rounded a corner, I noticed a beat-up car just behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Small town and all. It wasn't like they were barreling toward me. But after another block, they were still following closely, and something told me I should take a second look. When I glanced back, alarm bells started ringing. In the car behind me were 2 college-aged guys I didn't recognize. When I say this town was tiny, I mean it. Our population was only 500, and I was pretty sure I should have seen these guys at least once. Plus, the nearest college was a 40-minute drive away. But in an attempt to be friendly, I forced a smile as I looked at them. Neither of them smiled back. They didn't even look annoyed at me for being in front of them. No, they were staring at me, dead-eyed, as if they were fixated. At the time, I was a big fan of true crime, and I had heard once that if you think someone is following you, you can try circling the block. If they're still there, chances are they're following you. I didn't have a phone back then, so I couldn't call anyone. Circling the block to calm my nerves seemed like the best option. I tried to rationalize it in my head. They're just trying to get home, you're just paranoid, that's all. So I decided to circle the block. I started by taking 2 left turns, maintaining a steady pace and not looking back. My reasoning was that if they didn't know I knew they were following me, they might not do anything. But even as I did this, I could feel my body shaking, my mind racing for anyone nearby whose house I could go to, someone who might actually answer the door. They kept pace behind me, never speeding up to get ahead of me, never honking, or trying to push me out of the way. But as we rounded the 3rd corner, panic really started to sink in. I threw subtlety out the window and started pedaling as fast as I could, trying to make a full circle. As soon as I sped up, they did too. I had spotted a house I recognized, but the chances of someone being home and answering, slim to none. It was a block away, and to this day, I've never pedaled faster in my life. As soon as I reached the yard, I practically jumped off my bike, leaving it in the grass. I glanced back at them one last time, and just as I feared, they had stopped at the same spot where I had left my bike. Both of them were staring at me, waiting. I chose the side door instead of the front, hoping it would be less obvious, but they could still see me. In the last moment of panic, I decided knocking wasn't a good idea. They'd realize it wasn't my house and someone might not be home. So instead, I flung open the screen door, trying to squeeze myself a little behind the main door to make it look like I was entering. I yelled, "I'm home," hoping they'd hear me. I don't know how, but maybe by some miracle, as soon as I said that, they sped off down the street and I never saw them again. Once I saw they had left, I quickly ran around the back of the house, hiding behind the yard for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only 15 minutes, before leaving my bike there and walking home, ducking behind trees and houses every time I heard a car. I made it home safe. I didn't cry, though my heart was pounding 1,000 times per minute. I told my father when I got home. He believed this experience was me making up excuses as to why I didn't bring home my bike, so I never reported it. I can only hope that this was a misunderstanding and that they've never tried this again. I think I got into a car with a serial killer. Throughout the story, I would like for you all to please keep in mind that I was 20 years old and very naive. You're going to think I'm stupid, and I was. Probably lucky to be alive, and God do I know that. I kick myself whenever I think about this day. I just wanted to get some other opinions. Maybe I'm wrong about him. Okay, so about 20 years ago, I was walking down the road in a not so great area. It was summertime and I was dressed appropriately for the heat. Shorts and a tank. I'm very thin and was downright skinny then and got mistaken for a sex worker more times than I care to admit. This may or may not be important to the story. So anyways, I was walking to pick up my son from daycare. As I was going about my way, a truck full of men started to catcall and follow me. They turned around several times to yell at me out of the window, and I was getting nervous about it. I was passing a gas station parking lot, and a man not much older than myself stopped in a nice car and asked if I would like a ride. He didn't seem scary, and he was attractive, so I said okay and got in his car. Sheesh, I could smack myself. So I get into the car with him and he asks where I'm going. I tell him it's about a mile straight down the road I'm on. He starts out going the wrong way and tells me he needs to turn around. I pay little mind. He starts to ask me about myself, so I tell him. I was escaping a DV situation and was staying in a woman's shelter nearby. I was telling him how closely my activities were monitored and that I was due to pick up my son any minute. I think this may actually be what saved me. At some point I notice he takes another wrong turn, but I don't know the area at all, so when I point it out he says he's taking a shortcut or something, and I just go back to talking like an idiot. Then I get a whiff of something. I know now that that smell was death. Decomposition. I know this for sure now. I did not then. I turn around and look in the back seat, looking for spoiled food or something. The car is absolutely spotless. I bring up the smell and he brushes it off and changes the subject. But for some reason, the smell just started getting stronger. My dumb ass brings it up again. What is that smell? He says he doesn't know. Probably something he forgot to take out and has gone bad. When I tell you guys, there was not a crumb in that vehicle. I'm baffled. But eventually, he drops me off safe to my destination. He doesn't tell me his name, ask for my number, or give me his. And I don't think much of it until much later, when I smell that smell again. But this time, I know what it is, and it triggers the memory of the guy in the car. This was probably 2005 in Covington, Kentucky, and I'm very sure that him being aware that not only would I be missed, I would be missed quickly, and my movements would be tracked very specifically, was the only reason I had made it back out of the car that day. Don't talk about the skinwalkers. I have a story. It isn't mine, but it happened to my uncle. He used to tell the story when we went camping, and it scared the lights out of me every time I heard it. We live in Utah, and my Uncle Mark went on a mission at 19. They sent him to an Indian reservation in Arizona. They paired him up with a companion named Carl. When they first got there, there was a huge rift with the locals on the reservation with them being there. They didn't want my uncle and Carl staying on the reservation grounds. Eventually, they came to a compromise that they would stay on the outskirts in a trailer. This reservation wasn't very big and was located next to a heavily wooded area. The first night they were trying to sleep when all of a sudden their trailer starts to shake violently back and forth. Startled and not sure what was happening, they climbed under their table for cover. Mark could distinctively hear someone pushing it from both sides of the trailer, almost like a group of people. After about 5 minutes, it stopped. That next day, they made rounds on the reservation and were talking to the locals. Carl made a comment to one of the families that their trailer was shaking the night before. The family got very quiet and then told them that they had to leave. They thought it was strange but didn't think much of it. The next night, it happened again. They awoke to their trailer shaking back and forth. Again, they climbed under the table until it stopped. This went on for 2 more nights. Anytime they tried to talk to anyone about it, they got quiet and told them to leave. Mark started thinking that, due to the tension of their arrival, the locals were doing this to scare them off the reservation. They then go into a convenience store and they were talking together about how frustrated they were with the situation. The clerk overheard and said, "They can't talk about it, it's forbidden." Confused, they ask him, "Can't talk about what?" The guy continues to tell them about the skinwalkers. He says they are evil demons that were once Native American witches. If they talk about it, the skinwalkers will come for their souls. They just walked out of there baffled. They thought it was another scare tactic. So that night, when the shaking started again, my uncle decided to be brave and confront them. He went to the trailer door, flew it open, and yelled, "Hey!" When he did that, he saw these 3 animals run off. 2 were wolves and 1 was a bear. But they looked strange, almost with human features. As he watched them run towards the trees, all 3 stood up on 2 legs and walked slowly towards the trees, making a human cackling laugh. It scared him so bad that they called their mission president that next morning and asked to be moved. They were relocated that day. For a year, nothing happened. One day, they announced Carl was being relocated to another city and Mark was getting a new companion, Jimmy. They had to drive for about an hour to pick Jimmy up from the airport. The road they traveled went through the boundaries of the reservation. They arrived at about 8 p.m. and met Jimmy, and they go to leave. The mission president tells Jimmy, "We are driving through a dangerous area at night, so we can't make any stops. If you need to use the restroom, you need to go now." Jimmy says, "I'm fine." The mission president gets even serious enough to freak out Mark. He said, "I'm not kidding, go do your business." Jimmy was insistent that he was fine, so they hit the road. As they were about 30 minutes into the drive, they were going through the area of the reservation boundaries. Jimmy starts complaining that he needed to pee badly. The mission president says, "We can't stop here, you'll have to hold it." Jimmy keeps going on, that he really can't hold it. So the mission president stops the car and says, "Okay, but you will do your business next to the door, and if I say get into the car, you better get into the car fast." With a look of confusion, Jimmy says, "All right," opens the door and starts to do his business. About 5 seconds later, the mission president says nothing and just yanks Jimmy into the car and floors it. Jimmy and Mark start freaking out, asking what's going on. The mission president says nothing and just increases his speed. All of a sudden, Mark sees something next to the car to his right. A giant wolf-looking man was running on 2 feet next to the car. Mark looked at the speedometer. They were going over 60 miles an hour and still increasing. The wolf creature kept right next to the car for 10 minutes until it finally took off into the trees. Shaking, Jimmy gets out of the car when they arrive and says, "What did I just see?" The mission president says, "Next time I tell you to take care of your business, you take care of your business." Childhood encounters in the woods. I'm relatively new to Reddit, but I wanted to share the story and hadn't really thought of it before. When I was young, I was a very awkward kid. I had a lot of difficulty making and keeping friends. I spent most of my time hiking outside of my hometown in the Angeles National Forest. I lived with my grandmother in the town of Wrightwood. I would spend most of my nights out camping, claiming to be going on small trips with my Boy Scout troop. when in reality I would just take my backpacking tent and find a nice secluded canyon to sleep in. Whenever I would sleep in the canyon, I would have strange but comforting dreams, where my childhood dog, Shelby Lynn, would come find me in the woods, huddle up in my sleeping bag to stay warm, and I would talk to her throughout the night about my woes and my accomplishments. It always felt surreal when I woke up and she wasn't there, so I tried to go back as often as possible, just so I could see her again. All the way up until I turned 16, I stopped coming to the mountains so often, because I was spending a lot of time with my girlfriend down in the high desert. One day, about a year into our relationship, I decided to take her hiking up one of my favorite canyons. About halfway up the canyon, she slipped and badly twisted her ankle. It was swollen to the size of a grapefruit. I asked her to let me carry her back down, or to let me tear a piece of my shirt to use as a sling, but she refused, so we continued down. About 10 minutes into our hike down, she said she saw something. I asked her what it was, and she said she didn't know, just movement in her peripherals. Then, about 5 seconds later, something scared her so badly, she almost fell again. I took her back home and we treated her ankle with a sling and a compression wrap. To this day, she still refuses to acknowledge what happened, and I think perhaps that's for the best. When I was 17, we eventually broke up. Her mother had gotten into an accident drinking and driving, and she was forced to move in with her grandparents. We just couldn't keep up the long-distance relationship. I continued going to the mountains for 2 more relationships and 2 more years, but I never brought somebody to the mountains with me during that time. I simply spent half my free time with my boyfriend or girlfriend, and the other half in the mountains, dreaming of my childhood dog in bliss. When I was 19, I met a girl who really understood me as a person. Foolishly, I thought that meant she might understand what was happening to me in those mountains. I told her all about my dreams and all about what happened to my first ex. She wanted to try to see for herself. We left at about 8 p.m. and arrived at the base of my favorite canyon at about 9 p.m. Me and my then girlfriend went hiking up with flashlights and some camping gear, hoping to spend the night. We spent a good 20 minutes setting up a site where I cleared all the flammables in a 5-foot radius and started cooking in my jet boil. We had some dinner, although I can't remember what we ate. I think it was just Uncle Ben's rice and some bread. Then we decided to walk around some more. About 20 minutes into this hike, she stopped dead in her tracks. She had seen something moving, just like my first ex. She looked at me and asked if I saw it too. I hadn't. Then she took another look and let out a small whisper of a scream. She grabbed me and asked me to take her back to our camp so we could leave. Later, she described to me a scraggly, dark, long-haired dog that looked to be about as tall as her, which was 5'3" and covered in mange and forest debris. She told me it grinned at her and that its mouth looked almost human. She begged me to never go back there again. She told me whatever was up there wasn't a friend, and that I should never have let it into my life in the first place. I believed her at the time, but now, 5 years out of that forest and 1 year out of our rocky relationship, I miss the forest more than anything else. I miss my dreams, and I miss the feeling of ease and bliss I got from being there. I want almost more than anything to go back there and spend a night, just to feel like that again. Safe, comfortable, and carefree. Should I go back? Maybe just for 1 night. Or was she right? Is there something here that's dangerous? And if so, why has it never seemed dangerous to me? Why do I feel safest when I'm there? My ex tried to kill me. This is gonna be long, I'm sorry. So where to start? I met them when I was 15. He was 17. Looking back, the signs were all there when it started, with very small things. Us just roughhousing like buddies, we are both guys. But it would escalate to them taking me back behind the shed where my friends couldn't see, holding me against the wall and fake hitting me. Like pretending to hurt me while laughing the whole time. But he did actually hurt me. I would have bruises for weeks. One time, he literally shoved my face in stinging nettles, but my naive 15-year-old self thought it was all in good fun. If only I knew then what I know now. We started dating at the end of my sophomore year, and over the summer things progressed. He used to beg me to give him massages, and whenever I would refuse, he would pin me down and tickle me until I relented and said yes. And when I stopped before he was ready, he'd go back to tickling me. Sometimes he would just randomly pin me down and tickle me. I would beg him to stop, but the only way to get him to stop was to literally fight him off me. This happened almost every single time we hung out. I grew to dread it. I don't know why I kept going back. Honestly, I was just so in love with him. I'm 5'3" and weighed even less than I do now, about 100 pounds. He is 5'7" and lifted, just for some context. I learnt a lot about how to fight someone bigger off me in those days. It wasn't just the tickling though, as I said before. They used to jokingly beat me up, but the force of his punches were not jokes. I would have bruises all over my arms and thighs from them punching me. One time, I got in the front seat of our friend's car when he wanted shotgun, so he proceeded to punch my arm the entire 15-minute drive until I was almost crying because I kept trying to move away and tell them to stop. My friend who was driving did nothing. I don't know why. He was even older than both of us. I don't know why he thought that that was normal. It wasn't just punching me either. I had recently gotten my ear pierced and he thought it was just so funny to smack me on the side of the head. Once he made me bleed, and when I told him, he said he just said he hadn't. Once he made me bleed, and when I told him what he'd done, he just said no, he hadn't. I tried to talk to him about this so many times, asking, please just don't touch my ears, and every time I asked, all he would do was correct my grammar. This was all over text. I was honestly just scared to say anything to him in person. We ended up breaking up and just staying friends. I spent all my free time at his house like an idiot. Another thing he started doing was always wanting to smoke me up, but never smoking himself. Huge red flag, I know, but at the time, all I was thinking was more weed for me and less for him. I say all this to explain what our relationship was like and how utterly confusing this all was for me. To this day, I'm still confused as to why they acted this way. And now for the part where I think he tried to kill me. I was 16 and he was now 19. The day started off normal. We were just hanging out. From what I remember, this time period is kind of a spotty memory for me. The next thing I remember is him sitting on top of my chest and arms pinning me down, like he would normally do to tickle me. But this time, he had both hands around my neck, choking me. Not in a sexual way, like both hands on my windpipe. I couldn't breathe, I could barely talk. I kept hitting his hands and arms, trying to pull them off my neck. It wasn't working. I was trying to say that I couldn't breathe and that he needs to let go, but as I said, I could barely talk. I remember thinking, is this how I'm gonna die? Is he really trying to kill me? The whole time, he was just laughing and smiling. I honestly don't remember how I got him off me, but I think I must have used my legs and somehow rolled over. The next day, I almost forgot it even happened until I realized my neck was sore and bruised when I was at school. I texted him, "You left bruises on my neck," and all I got in response from him was, "Oh, sorry." I wish I could say that this was the last time I hung out with him, but it wasn't. I actually forgot it happened until weeks later when I was talking to my friend. I told her, and she was horrified. So I decided I never wanted to see him again and texted him that, and he said, "That's understandable." That's all I got from him. I have no idea what he would have done if we kept hanging out or if I was just a little weaker. Honestly, I don't want to think about it. I'm posting this here because it's not something I can ever really talk about. Being a guy, the response I've gotten is, "You must have given him the wrong idea. He probably thought you were just down to wrestle." But now that I'm older, I know what wrestling with your friends is, and it is always mutually agreed on, not like that. I'm still so confused. I'm 19 now and can't imagine treating someone like that. Oh yeah, and our whole friend group at the time called me crazy and said I was overreacting for not wanting to hang out with him anymore, and they essentially cut me out. Wild. So yeah, crazy ex, let's not meet again. If you've gotten this far in the video, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you like these kinds of videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every week. If you have a creepy encounter or scary story you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to drop it in the comments down below. I'd love to read them. I hope you have an amazing day and an amazing week, and I'll see you again next Sunday.